Brawl Stars recently released their Time to Explain podcast. We've got some news I'm going to cover. Now, I highly recommend watching the whole podcast if you have some time, because I won't be able to cover everything they talked about. I'm going to focus on the newsworthy things. But I really enjoyed listening to the podcast. It's really great for getting to know the developers and kind of hear their reasoning behind a lot of stuff. And also just to kind of get to know them and what they think about the community, which they talked a lot about, toxicity and stuff today, which was actually generally positive. Anyway, I'm going to cover the most important points and cover all of the news, including 5v5 officially coming to Brawl Stars. Now, in this next update, they are going to be experimenting on how they want to play and release the best 5v5 mode to the community. They're messing around with 5v5 Gem Grab, 5v5 Brawl Ball, 5v5 Wipeout, probably the other ones as well. I don't know how 5v5 Heist would be. That would be interesting. It might be like 3 offense, 2 defense, or maybe everybody tries to go on offense like they do now. The main point here is that they want 5v5 to be something more than just, hey, it's Gem Grab, but now it's 5v5. Yay, they want there to be some sort of a special twist that makes it different than the other game modes. It's not going to be in rotation all of the time. Instead, it's going to be like a special event, whether it's like a weekend event or like a limited time. We don't know how often it will be coming back. I don't know. If it's popular enough, they might make it permanent. That's not something they said, but that's typically how they've actually gone with permanent modes in the past. I know that people are going to hate me for this. I would love 5v5 Siege. I just know that that's the wrong way to go about this, because not everybody loves Siege, but I think that sounds really fun and cool. Now, how they try and add special twists to each of the different game modes, they did not specify. Like, I could see them adding multiple gem mines so that you can actually collect gems, it's like across a wider area. Also, they didn't talk about map size. I could see them making it like the Siege size map, which is actually wider than a typical map. For Brawl Ball, there might be multiple goals, maybe even multiple balls. We don't know. There's all sorts of different types of things, and I am honestly kind of curious. What do you guys want to see most from 5v5? So drop a comment down below. I'll be reading it, and if I see some ideas that I really like, I'll definitely send it to the developers' way, so that, I don't know, who knows? Maybe they'll be able to develop it and add it before they actually release 5v5. So Lex was on the podcast, and he brought up a really important topic about the game feeling a little bit more pay to win. That's not necessarily Lex's opinions or the developer's opinion, but a common opinion is that the gap between free-to-play players and pay-to-play players is actually increasing with the next update, specifically the changes that are going to happen with the Brawl Pass. Now, they didn't want to talk about too much about the Brawl Pass changes and stuff like that, because that update's not even out. That's for a future podcast. But this is an important topic, and I wanted to share the developers' response to that. And Supercell's whole perspective on this is that they want to reward people who are spending money on the game. That makes sense, because the opposite would be giving very little for the amount of money that people spend on the game, which means that it would cost significantly more to max out, which is actually more predatory. Because instead of being able to max out, with maybe a couple $100 over a long period of time, they then encourage people to spend thousands in a short period of time. There may be some really rich people that can afford to spend thousands, but typically the people that do spend those thousands are the people that don't have the self-control to prevent themselves from doing so. That's predatory monetization. That's not good. And the perspective of the Brawl Stars team is very different. They don't want it to be predatory. They want to make it so that you actually get value for spending money on the game. And in the future Brawl Pass update, they're going to increase that value. The thing is that if it is not rewarding enough to spend money on the game, people just won't spend money on it, and that's worse for everybody involved. Yes, people who spend money on the game will max out their account sooner after the next update, but people don't play like that. Even people who do have completely maxed out accounts only play a few brawlers at a time. And the game does allow you to max out the brawlers that you play for free within a relatively short period of time. Yeah, it's going to take years for you to max out your account, but their goal is to not be super predatory with the way they do this. They don't want to ask for absurd amounts of money from whales or the people that don't have the self-control to hold back. They want to provide enough benefits that a lot more people would be willing to spend just a little bit more than before. And in the podcast, they talked about very real benefits that everyone gets to experience when more people are spending money on the game. More revenue means that they can hire more people onto their team, which means that they can then release more content. It means that they can spend money on investing in lore campaigns like the investor video a few years ago or the CCTV that we've got going on right now. And yes, I know what's going on. I'm working on videos for it. It means that they can spend money on those cool animations to get for all of the brawlers. They can put more money into esports, and it also helps with the development of future Supercell games like Squad Busters or Moko or whatever the next big game is going to be. And because Supercell's current live games are doing well enough financially to be able to support these other games, they don't have to release games that are unfinished or just not good, which would then hurt the Supercell game experience and lead to a lower quality game, right? Like, we don't want that. These are things that every player can benefit from, whether you're spending money on the game or you're playing for free. There's one line that Danny said in the podcast that I really liked. If you like the game, you should be happy that someone else is supporting it. And I agree with that. Now, the next question though, is there a chance that the cost of hypercharges will decrease? Now, Danny did not have an official response from the team on this, but at least in Danny's response is that, rather than decreasing the cost so that the hypercharge would be worth the cost, he would rather see that hypercharges were improved to feel more and exciting and like actually worth the 5,000 coins they cost. And then once hypercharges are at that point where they feel worth it, then if there's still a need for a progression buff, then it would be better, rather than just decreasing the cost of just hypercharges alone, they would rather just buff progression overall so that not only will you get hypercharges faster, but you'll get power levels faster or new brawlers faster or upgrading, gadgets, gears, and star powers more quickly, right? It's not just going to be the people at the top of progression who are getting new hypercharges that would benefit from that. Like, the only people that get a real benefit from decreasing the cost of hypercharges are the people that are actually at the end of progression where they are buying all the hypercharges. Whereas if they just do a whole buff to the gold progression overall, then that benefits everybody rather than just the top few. And speaking of that buff, Lex asked the developers, when are we getting a coin buff? And Danny did specifically say that we are getting Mega Pigs 4 weeks in a row instead of monthly, at least for now. And in response to, it just not being, well, I don't know if it's entirely because it's just not worth it in comparison to Club League. I really don't know. Maybe it's, I have no idea. But either way, that's what's happening right now, and that's really cool. And they are also looking over everybody's feedback regarding the Mega Pig event and how they can improve it for the future. They are very adamant about looking over that community feedback, and they've shown us so many times in the past that if the community has a general idea that is, actually looks legit, then they are willing to make some changes. And I think that's probably going to happen with Mega Pig. We'll have to see what happens. Anyway, the thing is, though, is that they want to do these really cool special events, like the Shooting Star Drop event that we had recently released this last update. It was super fun. I really enjoyed that. But the issue with these like special events as being an actual buff to progression is that people don't see it like a buff because it's not guaranteed. Like, even if they said, hey, we're going to do a special event every month, it wouldn't feel guaranteed. People wouldn't view it as guaranteed progression. They would view those special events as like bonuses. And like, even if it was every single month and they guaranteed that they would do it, you know what I'm saying here? And that is very true. Like, on my free-to-play account, over the past 11 months, I have progressed way faster than I thought even possible because of all these unexpected like bonus and special events. I wouldn't say I'm like twice as far as I thought that I would be, but my estimates put me way further behind than where my free-to-play account is now. And it's because of those added bonuses that are unexpected, but are still like guaranteed to happen. It's kind of interesting. One question that was asked was, are there any chances for improvements when it comes to star drops, especially when it comes to cosmetics? They talked a lot about how frustrating it is to like get a random cosmetic for something you don't care about when you could have gotten the skin that you really do want. And, they do understand the frustrations with this, but because of the randomness of star drops, they're able to give us more cosmetics overall. At least that's what their response was. And that is undeniably true. Like, I have way more profile icons on my free-to-play account because of star drops than I ever would have if I had full control. Do I have the profile icons that I want? No. I don't. And this is why I don't love that response. I mean, I'm not trying to discredit it or anything like that, but like, I just don't personally love it. But then again, I honestly do not care too much about cosmetics. And in my opinion, they can monetize cosmetics however they want. I think there's wisdom in monetizing it in a way that is reasonable and makes sense and is good for players. But cosmetics don't have an actual impact on the gameplay and the strategy and the power levels and stuff like that. So they can do whatever they want. And the nice thing about star drops is that the coins and the power points from star drops are actually pretty solid. So I'm not complaining either way. But Danny did say that some sort of improvement to star drops is on their roadmap. We have no idea what kind of changes those could be. We have no idea when those changes might happen, but it's good to know that they are open to improvements for star drops and that someday in the future, we're likely to get some improvements. Next topic. Oh, this was a little bit sad for me, and I imagine you guys will think it's a little bit sad too, but there are no plans to do the Brawlies this year. And you know, I think that this sucks, and I'm disappointed, but like at the same time, their reasoning was very valid. It was an absolutely massive overtaking for them to do it. So Danny said that the script for the Brawlies last year was done in August, and it took the rest of the year for them to film everything, to produce it all, to edit it, to put it all together. Like there were a lot of moving pieces. It was really time consuming, and it became a distraction from the community manager's other responsibilities. Like it was so much fun, but it just was not quite the worth for how much time and money it took to do it when they could have been focusing their efforts on other stuff. They still want to do something cool for New Year's. It won't quite be as big as the Brawlies, but you know, as much as I don't like hearing that, I really do understand where they're coming from, and I think that that's okay. Now, Danny didn't say this specifically, so I'm kind of reading between the lines, but it sounds to me like the Brawlies actually added a lot of unnecessary stress in his life personally. And I think that that's where this decision makes the most sense to me. It's like, hey, if like this is causing you to lose sleep and making you just not enjoy your life and not enjoy work, coming into work every day, I think that it's completely justifiable that they stop doing it, even if it's just one of the developers. Like that's how I feel about it. I don't know. I am putting words in Danny's mouth. Maybe he loved the whole process. I mean, he did specifically say in the podcast that he did not enjoy coming to work on it. So like, I know that he didn't absolutely love everything, but you get where I'm coming from here. I think that it added a lot of unnecessary stress, so I'm okay with this. Now, this whole podcast was actually a group of community managers. We had Danny and Marzio, the current community managers, but then we also had Ryan and Paula, who were previous Brawl Stars community managers. And Lex was also in the podcast as an integral member of this community. And a lot of the podcast, they talked about the community, the things that they love about the community, the things that they don't necessarily love about the community, and they did specifically talk about whether the community is toxic. And I'm not covering everything in this video, so if you want to hear more thoughts on it, then definitely go watch the podcast. But the community managers really stress how genuinely amazing the Brawl community is. Yes, there are some toxic community members out there. I personally have definitely had my fair share in dealings with toxicity within the community, but I would agree that the Brawl Stars community is a shining example of how amazing some communities can actually be. Like, you really don't see such an awesome community in the gaming industry hardly ever. Even when people do have their complaints, for the most part, they're pretty constructive. And I know that's not always the case, but I think the community is in a pretty good place. Now, one bit of information that I found very interesting that I did not know before is that apparently the team has actually paid players so that they could use their skin or brawler concepts and put them into the game. We're not talking about like Supercell Make, where they are openly doing that, right? We're talking about situations where they've kind of done it like without saying anything to anybody. And I always suspected there were situations where they might have taken inspiration from specific player concepts or skin concepts or whatever, but I didn't know that they actually just paid the players who came up with those. I think that's actually really cool, kind of interesting. I thought that was worth mentioning. Bit of a topic swing, but they currently do not have plans to do any more bad random songs. It might happen sometime in the future. They're focusing on other things right now. At one point, Ryan mentioned that pre-beta, Brock was actually a robot, which is cool. According to Paula, Squad Busters is still alive, and that's really great to hear. Now, things I did not include in this video was them talking about their favorite parts of their community, things they dislike about the community, how they feel about working on the Brawl Stars team. They talked about what it was like landing this job and how much of a dream job it has been. They talked about at times that they've been recognized on the street. They talked about advice on how to get into their type of work. They talked about all sorts of really interesting things. Definitely check out the podcast. I think it's absolutely worth it. But those are all the news points for this video. I want to know what you guys think about 5v5 and what they could do to make it really fun and exciting. So drop a comment below with that and subscribe for future Brawl news. We'll see you in the next video.